right. So we're here on part 4, the final part of the QBR process. So for those of you who are getting tired of this, this is the end.
This is it.
For those of you who are excited about this and have been like eating up every minute of this series, this is the end. So what we want to do is we want to talk through, like, so far we talked about how you do a QBR, what's wrong with a QBR, what are some tales that you can tell that you're doing the QBR right. So Skip and I have a lot of stories about QBRs that have gone well, that have taken unexpected turns and that have discovered things. And it wasn't because we were technically pushing the conversation.
Oh.
We were just structuring the conversation to give people the ability to talk about the business and what was going on. And so, like, Skip's got a great one where he talked to a client and he just went in there with a SWOT exercise, and then he walked out and the partners themselves came out with a new understanding of their business. So let Skip tell that story first.
Yeah, and that was really great. So again, there's two individuals, these two guys, they're both running business units within this company. We sat down, we ran through the SWOT, and both of them, at least twice, I forget exactly how many, but they go back and forth during this, and they look to their peer and go, I didn't know. And, it was, I didn't know you had that problem, or I didn't know you guys could do that. Or, it just this enlightenment that collectively the group was able to do. And so that made it a very productive. Everyone felt really good about that. So, feelings don't drive business, right? So what do we do with that? So all of these things that came from that were business action items. So it was for me, it was really cool because I didn't have to pull all this stuff out. I just had to listen. And then my action afterwards was just aligning technology to meet everything they talked about. It was the duck hunting game, right? It's just they sent things floating across the screen and I'm shooting at them. So it was just a great way to engage with them. And so to flip it over from the client side, though, it's all business. All right. I'm not talking technology. I'm not pushing things onto them. The discussion is about their business. There's several good elements. One, people want to show up for those sort of meetings, right? We've talked about this in the past. Sometimes you have problems getting your clients to accept the invites. It's because you're talking about technology and not their business. And they know that's going to happen. So, this was a great engagement. I could have scheduled a follow. I probably should have. This was, learning curve here on me. But I could have scheduled a follow-up meeting, that one right there, and everyone would have signed up. Everyone. Yep. It was actually kind of a large meeting, this one. Everyone would have been willing to sign up and do that again. I mean, isn't that what you want with your clients? Do you want them to say, hey, when can we do this again? I want to do this again.
Yeah. So for those of you who are out there who are VCIOs and selling consulting services on the side, this is when you say, hey, if you tell the leader as a segue or as a sidebar out of the conversation, like, look, if you want to have these conversations regularly, I'm happy to drive these once a month and follow up with you.
Yep.
And the leader be like, yes, please. And that's the kickoff to your VCIO conversations, that you're going to be driving these once a month and you become an integral part of their business. So what we want to be able to do is show our clients what we can do with them, not just for them. And so when Skip walked into this, I love this conversation he had with these people because he tells it in a variety of ways. Like sometimes it's, he walked in there and he asked a question and all of a sudden these two guys are having a conversation side by side, like, wait a minute. And then they start troubleshooting their own problems in the conversation. And that's okay. Let that happen because you're just taking notes now. You're a fly on the wall in a leadership meeting. Oh, they're having these problems. Oh, there's a technology solution to that. Let me wait until they're done. And then I'm going to go in and talk with them how to get this done. So what we want to be able to do is have multiple conversations where we aren't railroading the conversation. We're giving a framework where they can discuss.
I think that's a really important element. Like, so this one that we're talking about, so this organization, they were generally speaking in the oil and gas industry. Now, I have a long experience in the oil and gas industry. So I showed up thinking I'm well suited for this conversation, right? I've got the big head going into this one. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm going to be able to talk about, lease operating expenses and, all these other, different deals that I've, come to understand over the years. And fortunately, I started listening before I started talking, and I quickly realized that their area of oil and gas and what they did was a bit unique. And in fact, I knew very, very little about it. So I shut up, fortunately, and just listened to what was going on. But I tell all that to say, you don't have to know all the details of your client's business. You don't have to be the subject matter expert. They are, all right? And you're the facilitator with the technology focus, all right? But if you do this really well, like what Adam was talking about there, just the general VCIO sort of roles, that technology focus actually becomes a little less of a requirement. And it's just a facilitator. You're actually helping their business. And so there's a lot of opportunities for us to get involved here and really drive success in our clients' engagements.
Yeah. And I tell people in my onboarding sessions or coaching sessions all the time that when you change your mindset to be business oriented, like when you stop thinking in terms of asset management, we start thinking in terms of what am I solving for my client, you will have a better time and a better conversation, and it'll look different. It'll feel different. So, for example, like one of my stories is I went in and talked to this school, nonprofit, small school, and they put all their teachers in the room with me. We did a SWOT exercise. And it was just a discovery to kind of help them understand what was going on. I was doing this one pro bono. And I sat there and asked the teachers, like, what was going on? What were the biggest problems with technology? And I kind of put things in context. How was the school doing? What was their focus of the school? And I just went through a SWOT exercise looking for their strengths. What are you guys really good at? And what are you, things like that. And all of a sudden, like, they start talking about their technology needs. And they had this mobile lab over to the right side. You know what I'm talking about, has a bunch of Chromebooks in it or a bunch of iPads in it. And then they talked about their computer lab as well. I'm like, well, why do you have a computer lab? And they're like, well, so the kids can work on computers. And I'm like, what's that over there in the corner? I'm like, well, it's our mobile lab. I just stared at him for a little bit. I said, the reason why we had computer labs back in the 90s and early 2000s is computers were expensive and they were big and they were hard to move around.
And they were wired.
So we had to have these big, long tables and this nice setup for them. And that allowed us to keep them secure and safe. But now you have this mobile lab over here. It's the size of a small locker. And you can cart it around the school. So why do you have this extra room? And so they started talking amongst themselves, like, we don't, like, who uses it? And like they started thinking, like, well, if we don't have that, what can we use that room for? And then all of a sudden, every teacher in that room had an idea of what you could use an extra space for.
That was really
this conversation happened. And I think they ended up building a new like third grade room. And so they expanded the number of kids they could serve simply because I asked a better question. Mm-hmm. This room had sat there forever. I mean, they came up with ideas of a maker's lab they could put in there. They came up with ideas of an extra classroom, an art room, a ton of things. And that had nothing to do with me other than I pointed out the history of why computer labs existed. And I connected the dots for them that they didn't need this room anymore. And then they were able to solve a business problem and expand their system. Yep. And that was not something that I did. I just facilitated a conversation where the right people were in the room. Don't assume that your client doesn't have silos.
Right.
A silo is that that area of your business where they talk amongst themselves, they're really good at their jobs, but they don't see what like accounting does. Like if your sales department isn't talking to accounting or isn't talking to operations, sometimes there can be a breakdown of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And there's ways to get those down. You get them all in the same room as a leadership team, but don't assume that your client is having these conversations. They're busy just like you are, and they get stuck in operational mode too. They get stuck in firefighting mode too. And these QBRs you have should have multiple leaders in the room if they're being done right, where the leaders are finally having these cross-department conversations. And in the corporate world, IT is a key component to that because we branch across all the silos.
Yes, that's it.
And we can facilitate those conversations. Accounting does the same thing. They're also somebody who branches across all areas of the business, but they don't tend to be people. They don't tend to drive that stuff. They're going to ask their questions. They're going to fill their data. IT does that as well. We're going to ask our questions and we're going to fix the computers. But if you get to the QBR, if it doesn't have to be that way, if you can get to where you're asking open-ended questions like a SWOT exercise, a QBR, we're like, hey, what's going on in the business this quarter? That one question. What's driving revenue this year? What's going to keep us from driving revenue this year? These things that you're asking questions about, I'm just here to learn so I can make sure technology is supporting you. Then let the conversations fly.
Yep.
And you get situations
don't
like
limit
what
them.
Chip and I are talking about.
Yes. One of the interesting things that came out of that big SWOT meeting that I did was this organization had a tremendous amount of intellectual property. And it was kind of surprising because they're kind of hardcore manufacturing. And when we're talking, the big giant steel pots full of, molten iron kind of things, right? But they had some processes and some things that they had developed over the years that was actually very, very valuable. And through the discussion, we found it was all sitting in a Microsoft inbox on one computer. And a longer technical story there, but this computer was like enshrined, in an office, and all their information was here. And it was like, why is that? And what can we do to make that better? That this is a bad way of, protecting this really, really valuable asset you guys have. And so the outcome from that was a not so much a document management system, but a knowledge system where they could access information, where they could actually create some training materials for new staff and grow the business and disseminate some of this information, because that was another challenge. They were they're senior, not just so they're senior, they're qualified team members were getting much, much older, and they weren't replacing those with people with the right skill set. So all of these challenges, and that's not an area that typically IT steps in, right? I mean, if someone called us up and said, hey, we bought this new software and it needs a server, we're like, okay, we'll jump in there. But why not be involved in that process a little bit earlier? You're going to do the exact same things, but you get to kind of steer the directions. Maybe the product they're looking at, you look at the technical details and go, well, that is a mess. We'll be troubleshooting problems on that forever. Why don't we steer it over here? This is a platform that, the back end is so much more reliable. I can support this. I might even have a partnership with someone else delivering the technology. You have the ability to, help your business out. But here's the cool part. It's not just self-centering. In helping your client out by helping yourself out, they get better technology. They get better use. I mean, they're able to use that, get the value of their spend to be much more impactful to their business, and you get to make money along with it.
Yep.
Why not?
It's a win-win. You can make money and generate revenue.
Yes.
Believe it or not, and I know it's hard for operations to think of, is that, I'm just an expense. No. You can do both. Like, people buy our software all the time and they make money. We had one of our members just tell me the other day that it helped them save one of their 6-figure contracts. And we have other people say it helps us generate revenue. You can do things for your clients that do the same thing. I went in and I talked to them about how we take this mobile lab and we make that a standard. Now they have an extra room. Now they can, as a private school, so every kid in a seat generates revenue. They have 30 more kids coming in or 21 more kids, however big the classroom is. And that is additional revenue. And if you're thinking like a school that charges, $5,000 a year per kid times 20, it's $100,000 we just generated for them.
Yep.
And our contract costs, $15,000. That's a no-brainer, guys.
Yep.
And we consistently do this in QBRs. I've got a lot of stories about QBRs where we talk about this. In my main one, my case study that we have on our PDFs is that I helped a school with their E-rate and saving money there and making it so that they had less downtime so that their classrooms were more efficient, so they could take more map scheduling, they could do more online curriculum. And this helped the teachers out significantly to compete with the public school systems, which had great technology formats. And then they were able to add more classrooms and they're able to add more students because their teachers are more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
My contract generated more revenue than it cost. And you can do that as IT. Yep. That's the whole point, is that you're saving money and you're helping your client generate money. Yep. We've gotten so deep into this idea that we need to be asset management and that we need to be operations and that we're an overhead. We've been lying to ourselves. That's not what IT is. IT is a profit center.
Yep.
We are a way to generate revenue. We are a way to save. We are cost savings as well. We justify our own existence. And we are not just this simple thing that people have seen us for the past 10 years. That is a lack of leadership. And by doing QBRs with SWOT exercises or the 2 Qs or any of these like cute little tools we have, you can now show how you're a profit center. You can show how you're a cost saving center, but you're not justifying it. The client is.
Yep. And this idea that technology is really driving their business, that it makes them more money. I don't know. It does seem to have kind of gone to the background right now. Technology is a cost, right? You gotta pay for it. Everyone's got to have a PC. We got to have email. We're just going to sign up for it, right? And it doesn't really matter who we get it from, what it looks like. We just got to have it. So whoever can give it to us at the least amount, that's the one we're going to go with. And that's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
So I'm old enough to remember when we really started pushing PCs out into businesses. Small businesses could do it. All right. It wasn't just the corporate folks that could afford a mainframe. Now we had, these IBMs, that we could actually afford and sit at least in the corner of the office and everyone could use. We'd go do inventory, right? You want to know how many of XYZ product is in the store. It's a small store, right? It's a mom and pop place. There's only, 5, 6 employees, but you want to do inventory? Well, you've got to pay people to come in on the weekend, or you've got to close the business, right? So you don't have customers coming in, and someone has to physically go through and count every single thing, right? But what happens when you digitize your inventory systems, right? Your product base. And now when you're doing a computer-based point of sale, you want to know how many of XYZ product you have. You just go look at the database and it tells you. You want to, that was a really cool feature. Today it sounds like a really duh sort of thing, but in the late 80s, that was revolutionary. That enabled companies back then to go, I don't have to order 3 pallet loads of this. I can actually keep daily a track of how much information I have, and I can just order 1 pallet at a time. And I can order a variety of things. So my overall inventory is more balanced. That made them more money. All right. They saw the value in that. And that's why we did this. Today, technology has become an expense, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yep. We can get back at the conference table. We can get back to helping our clients leverage technology as an investment in their organization.
I'd say the key thing there is, if you want back at that table, you have to stop being the smartest person in the room. This is the big mindset shift. When you're in a QBR And whatever mechanic you're using, SWAT, 2Qs, a Porter's 5 forces, whatever you want to do, is that you assume that you have a lot to learn about how this company works. And then your job is to use a Socratic method to encourage the business owners to ask questions and to talk amongst themselves. Mm-hmm. And so you're prodding this and trying to move them along in a way that matters. And so when you change that mind shift, that shift in the mindset, you're now acting like a leader. You're now acting like somebody who cares about the client and wants to learn. And when you start as an engineer, start seeing these holes in the business that can be filled with technology, then you're going to make money and they're going to make money. So when I see that they're using technology, when they're just describing the school and they say, we have a computer lab and we have blah, blah, blah. And like, wait a minute, what about the computer lab? Why do you have that anymore? I can ask that question right there and then let them take the rest of it. I am just there as a resource at that point. And when I identify, why are you still doing timesheets by hand? Hey, do you want us to do an RFP for that and get you some of these automated timesheet systems? And the secretary is sitting over there going, oh, please. Oh, take that off my schedule. Yeah. And now you have an advocate in the room and you get asked to come back for more leadership sessions.
That's it.
That's where if you're a VCIO, now you can say, hey, look, if you want us to come to these sessions on a regular basis, here's how much it costs. Or you can just say, man, every session you're in like this is going to generate a crap ton of revenue and projects for us. I'll come to these for free.
Yep.
And that was a big changing point in my career where I realized as a VCIO attached to an MSP that you're making more money off of these sessions, just sitting in the room being a fly on the wall, than you would be by charging individually for it.
Yeah.
So this is QBRs, guys and girls and people and whoever else cares about these. You are there to learn about the business. You're there to review the business and then insert your opinion when it's applicable, but help that conversation happen to review the business. They should be having QBRs on their own, but I'm guaranteeing you most small businesses don't do QBRs as a whole. So when you walk in and say you're going to do one, do a QBR, a full-on QBR, so that when they discuss this stuff for the first time, that you're part of that table and they get used to you being there. And there's no competitor on the planet that's going to be able to oust you because you are a seat at that table that they love and they cherish and is helping them move their company forward.
Yep.
When you do that, that's how you know your QBRs are successful. When they're having business discussions that you're a part of that are causing business solutions to happen while you're in the room.
Yep. You want to be part of the investment, not just an expense.
This has been a great series, guys. I'm excited for us to get moving on other topics for the podcast and get back into the routine. So we'll see everyone next week with a brand new topic.
See ya.